Hey guys, I just want to share a quick devotional word today with you, if I can, from something that over the past 4 or 5 years has become my favorite chapter in the Old Testament, Exodus 17. And so let me just give you a couple of minutes on this. Exodus 17, the first couple of verses out of the NET says this: Now there was no water for the people to drink, so the people contended with Moses. They wanted to stone him. I want you to know every one of us faces issues in our local church. We all face issues. There will all be moments where there is no water for the people to drink. I remember when I was pastoring in Litchfield, and we didn't have any money, and our sewer line was broke, and we had restrooms, and we had a little second building, and we had restrooms in the second building, so people had to go out and go into the second building to use the restroom because we didn't have any money to buy a new sewer line. And we will always have issues. The issue may not center on you, but your leadership will be the target of other people's pain. Listen to that again. Your leadership will be the target of other people's pain. So action is coming. And I want to ask you this great question. How do you get ahead of the stoning? How do you get ahead of other people grabbing rocks to throw them at your leadership? You know, a lot of times I tell people this, sometimes your leadership may never be affirmed until you are no longer the leader, until you are no longer a lot of times when you are no longer the leader, people who would throw rocks at you while you were there will go, "Oh, best pastor we ever had." Pastor Roy, you've told me an illustration of that from your life a couple of times, that there was a guy who was just a constant pain for you, but who's
when for 11 years he was one of my greatest antagonists, and now that I'm not there anymore, he calls me all the time, "You were the best pastor we ever had." And I'm thinking, why couldn't you have come to that realization 5 years ago? So, but yes, it happens, Pastor.
It happens. So how do you deal with other people's pain that causes them to make your leadership the target of their stoning? You have to understand, first of all, people's issues lead to conflict. Unresolved issues lead to carnal behavior, and carnal behaviors are the igniter switch for revolt. So don't be surprised. The first thing to do is to begin to listen for the murmur. The Bible says that they murmured against Moses. They begin to listen for the little murmurs, and don't let them grow. A little more murmuring, and they will soon want to stone you. They'll want to take action because their murmurs will be ripples in the water that will continue to grow and spread out. And eventually other people will begin to murmur who have no issue, but they will just simply joining in on the murmuring. Secondly, understand that unresolved issues cause people to revert to previous choices. Oh, that we could go back to Egypt. Most people's initial response to their pain or the things that they don't like is they want to they want to throw stones at what we're doing now. And their answer, even though it didn't work back then, they were slaves. This always just shocks me. They were slaves in Egypt, but what was their answer? Oh, that we could go back to slavery. No. So we have to help people to see that these unresolved issues, these pain points, are causing them to revert to previous things that they hated more back then that they do now. So here I think is a great key. The Lord said to Moses, "Go over before the people." What's he saying? Confront this head on. Go over before the people, but take with you some of the elders of Israel. Leaders understand that there is a spiritual conflict behind the physical or visible conflict. When God is doing something new in your life or his church, the enemy will always try to create ripples and murmurs and complaints and eventually stoning. But the power of unity among leaders is maybe your greatest and strongest point. So don't face it alone. Take some of the elders of Israel with you and begin to deal with these issues. Begin to share your concerns and your heart with people who can help you and walk with you in this area of life. It is so, so powerful. I want to finish with a quick illustration, and then we're going to pray. And Pastor Roy, I'm going to ask you to lead our prayer time here in just a moment, if you would. As superintendent, probably my second year into being superintendent, just about the time I think into myself, man, I'm getting a handle on this thing. I faced a situation, and where the answer to me was absolutely obvious. It was obvious what we needed to do. It was in the bylaws. There was no other choice. There was no other option. This had to be done this way. And I went to this church, and we were dealing with a moral failure. And so I went and I just said, hey, we've had a moral failure. We're going to deal with it. And people were angry. People were mad at the obvious decision that had to be made. And when I left that day, I called Brother Griswold and I said, Brother Griswold, I can't believe that these people were mad that there was a discipline that as we dealt with a moral failure. What? And Brother Griswold gave me in about 2 minutes the most powerful illustration that to this day I still use. None of us are able to always deal with the pain issues, with the ripples of murmuring on our own. Go with others and allow them to stand with you to face these kind of situations. Gather wisdom from other people. Don't just rush out and make a decision. Don't just rush out and say the first thing that comes to our mind, but gather the elders around you and begin to say, not how do I fix this? How do we fix this?